Chris Warnke. I'm the host of The Next Word, and today we're going to talk about defense health. As my guest, we have one of the longest serving executives in the defense medical arena with us, Dr. Terry Rauch, who's the Director of Research and Development, Policy and Oversight at the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Health for the Department of Defense. Dr. Terry Rauch, welcome.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.
I entered the Army in 1978 after I finished my Ph.D. And like most recent graduates with a Ph.D., what are you doing? You're looking for a job, right? Right. And you know, at that time, you're looking for a postdoc or something similar. A friend told me of an opportunity in the Army where you could come in as what they call an obligated volunteer, and which is I think it was either 2 years or 3 years, and I thought, well, let's give it a try, So, and he furthermore told me that, all I would be doing was research, and that's what I wanted to do. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try for 3 years, and then 30 years later, here we are, or more than 30 years later. So that's how I got started.
Well, as I see you, of course, I see you as a Dr. Tony Fauci of the Defense Department. To be honest, I've always thought of you that way. So really, because your career is stellar. You've done so much, and I introduced you as one of the longest serving executives at the department, and you have to, in that position, you may really have to work with so many other agencies, including, of course, NIH and the Veterans Administration, and some of the things you've been doing have been just really cross-cutting. And can you talk a little bit about those collaborations and how much more I think the Department of Defense is collaborating with these agencies?
Oh, sure. Well, our collaboration primarily with NIH and the VA is largely built around our major programs. And so with respect to medical research in the department, our focus is on combat casualty care, military infectious diseases, what we call military operational medicine, and that includes mental health and psychological resilience. And then another major focus that we have is rehabilitation of service members and regenerative medicine. Those are all areas that the VA and the NIH also invest significantly in. So, we collaborate very closely with the VA and NIH. We get together every year on these major portfolios, and we do basically an all-day semi-deep dive into what we're doing in traumatic brain injury, what we're doing in psychological health, what we're doing in rehabilitation on separate days. We do probably about 15 to 16 of these a year. And what it does is it provides us within the department an opportunity to present what we're doing, what science we're investing in, what the science is telling us, what it's not telling us. The NIH participates and shares what they're doing, as does the VA. And frequently it leads to collaborative partnerships. For example, we have partnered with the VA in traumatic brain injury research, in hosting and sponsoring a major research consortium for a 5-year period of time. We did the same thing for PTSD. And so, we fund part of it, the VA funds part of it. We partner with academia and industry in those. And for me, it makes sense. It's just good government, if you know what I mean.
Right. And, since January, of course, 2020 of this year, things have changed. And I know certainly the military is looking at sort of predictive tools on extremism in the military and those kinds of issues. I don't know if you can talk about that, but certainly that's been a topic, not just in the military, but obviously the general public. And I know you've done a lot of work with PTSD and other traumatic brain injuries, but I'm just saying, is it something that maybe looking forward, are there other research capabilities that you're going to be identifying that can address some of these issues?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, we are concerned with radicalization and extremism. Ironically, I also sit on a NATO science and technology panel, and as of in the Army, and we were in Germany at the time. But yes, that's correct.
And speaking of being a colonel in the Army, so when was your first deployment? Was that or your first? When did you first?
Well, I spent most of my career in the Army in research and development within different Army laboratories and within the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. But for 2 years, in which I commanded the Army Public Health activity in Germany, Army Public Health Europe is what it's called today, where we made a number of site visits to our forces in Kosovo and also Bosnia. And those visits were primarily visits to address deployment health issues, environmental health issues, preventive medicine issues that our forces had to deal with in Kosovo and Bosnia.
Right, and I remember those years I remember those years very well. And that's why I was extremely interested in that. For our viewers, Dr. Rauch, a lot of people don't know, the NATO, really truly what the NATO working group does. Just a little, can you give a little background, because it's fascinating because you're how many countries are you working with? And this collaboration is so important on the issues we're just talking about. A little bit of background on how that came to be and, where it is today and why it's so important today.
Well, so I'm a member of the Human Factors and Medicine panel, and that's organized under the NATO Science and Technology Organization. I'm a member of the panel. Our lead is Dr. Patrick Mason at ONR. He's our lead U.S. delegate, and he has a number of other U.S. members on the panel, as well as numerous other NATO participating countries have multiple members on that panel. And like the name implies, Human Factors and Medicine under the NATO Science and Technology Organization, our focus is really on collaboration and moving NATO science forward in the areas of medicine and human factors.
Does that, beyond the NATO family, are there other countries that are brought into this collaboration? I'm sure, other beyond just the NATO Israel, other countries?
Well, no, you're exactly right. We can, on occasion, invite other members to participate in special studies and panel meetings. We've done it. We've done it before. I'll also add that we also have bilateral relationships. We have a bilateral relationship with the UK, and that a part of that relationship is dedicated to collaborating on medical research. And so there, our collaboration will focus on combat casualty care, PTSD research, regenerative medicine, and rehabilitation research. And it's quite an active task force.
Right. And I know you, going back on regenerative medicine, that's a fascinating topic. And I know certainly President Biden is very interested in, and we're going to take a short break shortly, but when we come back, I'd love to talk to you about that. And I believe, didn't Dr. Fauci and you sort of participate in some of the research, some of the activities around that topic, if I'm not mistaken? But
yes, not so much in regenerative medicine as Dr. Fauci and I did serve on some hearings, congressional hearings together at the beginning of last year, towards the March timeframe of last year, where we talked about our COVID responses.
Right, and we're going to turn to that. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
3 months ago, there weren't enough masks. We were desperately sourcing from all over the world. People were making face coverings from scarves, bandanas, and bits of fabric. Now there are plenty of masks, but some people don't want to wear them. Come on. Mask up, America.
Welcome back. You're watching The Next Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and I have a smile on my face because I have a special guest, Dr. Terry Rauch, who's probably one of the foremost country's experts on military medical research with the Department of Defense. Terry, thank you again.
My pleasure.
Terry, one of the symposiums that certainly I happened to fortunately attend years ago was your military health systems medical research forum that you hold every year.
For nearly the last 10 years, we've the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs has sponsored the Military Health System Research Symposium. It is basically nearly a week-long deep dive into the science that we're supporting. Normally about 3,000, more than 3,000 scientists from the department, from other government agencies, from academia, from industry, and from our partner nations attend. We have well over 2,000 presentations, and it is really an opportunity where people come together. All you do is talk science, listen to science, think deeply about the problems that we have in medical research that we try to solve in the Department of Defense for our nation. And I think thinking deeply, collaborating during the conference, we also form relationships that lead to partnerships and new research. Every year we publish the proceedings in and a special supplement in the journal Military Medicine. We just published it last month. That was for last year, which was canceled, but we still published all of the abstracts, all of the proceedings, because it's a matter. It's a matter of science. So hopefully this year we can get our conference approved and we can move past our COVID challenges and we can meet once again in August, towards the end of August in Florida for our in-person symposium. So let's all get vaccinated. Everybody needs to get vaccinated so we can get past this.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a big proponent. Dr. Rauch, another area, of course, of concern in this country, of course, is cancer research. And our President Biden, has been very involved with his moonshot cancer program. And what's going on at Walter Reed right now is just amazing. In the Cancer Research Center, love to hear about what's coming out of it and number of new therapies or new treatments. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, sure, absolutely. The Murtha Cancer Center, which is at Walter Reed and is directed by Dr. Craig Schreiber, who is not only at Walter Reed, but holds a joint appointment at our Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. They're co-located together in Bethesda on the same campus. They just do some wonderful pioneering research in cancer. And it's for the benefit of our service members. Almost all service members on active duty that have cancer pass through are touched, pass through the Murtha Cancer Center, and many of them participate in our clinical research studies. I will also say that about 5 years ago, when President Biden, who was then Vice President Biden, launched the Cancer Moonshot, the Murtha Cancer Center stepped up and put together two just wonderful initiatives. One called Apollo. That's an acronym. Don't ask me what it stands for, but it's on proteogenomics. And the other, what we call the Framingham Cancer Study, which is a longitudinal study, all using the resources of the Department of Defense to advance military cancer research and advance cancer treatment and therapies for our service members and our DoD beneficiaries.
Right. Well, it's terrific. And Walter Reed sits, of course, in a county, Montgomery County, Maryland, of which is where, of course, the studio is located. And there's so many companies in the county right now that are also doing, really breakthrough research on cancer therapies and treatments. But besides all that, there are so many other institutions that are part of, I call it the Defense Health Research family. Can you talk a little bit about those, like the Uniformed Services?
Oh, sure.
Institute. Oh, there's so many. The Henry Jackson Foundation. There's so many.
Oh, sure. So the performers of our research. Well, I should back up and say that our Defense Health Agency really executes the management of our research funding. We normally provide, high-level scientific direction. The Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs does on a yearly basis. That's kind of the research agenda that kind of spells out the priorities of the department, our legislative requirements, our executive branch requirements that we might get from the White House. We provide that, or she provides that to the Defense Health Agency. they in turn allocate the resources, largely the funding, to our performers, which largely are the Uniformed Services University, our Army labs, our Navy labs, our Air Force labs, and our military treatment facilities. And we just have some wonderful work that's going on, either in-house in those facilities, or in many cases, they will partner with academia and industry and sponsor extramural research. For example, we have been collaborating for at least the last more than 5 years with the NCAA and academia on looking and trying to understand head injury in college sports.
Which
And we have developed a collaboration that includes 30 colleges and universities, that also include our military academy, our military service academies. They're part of the NCAA, and it's all an attempt to understand the natural history of concussion in sports, and trying to determine return to play, and in some cases, particularly with our service academies, following them longitudinally throughout their military career. Now that's being done. That's being done at our Uniformed Services University. So that's just an example. And I will say that we have over 40,000 college athletes, to include our cadets and midshipmen, enrolled in this study, which we're following, and about 40% of them are female, and that represents the largest concussion study that we have ongoing.
Amazing. I'm happy to hear that, because as you know, in the press the last 2 days, 3 days, there's been a lot of talk about this, in the press, about the impact that concussions have had on our players, and not just certainly our college level players, but also our, high school players. And I know National Children's Hospital has done a lot of work in this, arena as well. But yes, it's a serious issue, national issue.
Yeah, and it just doesn't stop there. In that, we need to understand the long-term impact of repeated, exposures and head injury, because we're starting to understand the risk for Alzheimer's, for Parkinson's, for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and we also have some wonderful work that we're sponsoring with Stan Prusner, who's out at University of California, San Francisco, for a drug discovery program for Alzheimer's and CTE and Parkinson's disease. So it's not good enough just to understand that there's a risk involved. What we need to do is figure out how to treat it successfully.
Absolutely. We have a few minutes left, and you mentioned women, and I know your department's done a number of studies on women's health research in the military. Any priorities that you can talk about, that research priorities that have come to the agency's attention, that have been a focus?
Well, we do have a research program at USU, at the Uniformed Services University, that is focused on women's health research. a lot of it is conducted at our military treatment facilities. And I think that they would be happy, very pleased if that's a segment that you want to highlight.
Absolutely.
A very
Thank you.
important segment, I will say. I think that that would be a nice call out to have a dedicated session on that.
That would be great. Thank you. And we want to have you back as well, Dr. Rauch. You're just a wealth of information and what a history. And we didn't even get to your athletic abilities, which I hope could take another half hour of the show. But I want you back. Thank you. This has been really informative, and thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. You've been watching The Next Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke. Thank you.
Even though there is so much against us, you will see me wearing a face covering because I care about myself and my community. You will see me as a woman who stands up for what I believe in. Join us in wearing a face covering to help stop the spread of the coronavirus, because this is one small act of kindness that has the power to make a difference.